morning. So this storm arises while the disciples are on the lake. The water begins to flood over into the boat, and the boat starts sinking. And the disciples, understandably, go over to Jesus, who is asleep in the bow of the ship, and they say to him, "Lord, do you not care that we are perishing, that we're in the process of drowning right now?" The disciples probably didn't always know it, but every conversation they had with God was an experience of prayer. Because Jesus is God, and when we speak with God and listen for his response, we're praying. Sometimes God makes a very audible response, but all of the time in our life, his response is much quieter. It happens in the depths of our hearts, in our soul, where we have a special kind of access to God, but where we need to listen for his quiet voice. And often the way that God speaks is outside of the time that we're praying, during the course of the day, during the course of the week. And we have to be attentive to our weeks, to be open to that, open to what happens each day, because sometimes God is speaking to us through that too. Jesus rebukes the disciples for not yet having faith. But it does seem from the way that they act like they do have some partial kind of faith, or some partial kind of hope. They go over to Jesus, and they say, "Lord, do you not care that we're perishing?" So they must have had some hope, right? That Jesus had a capacity to do something for them. If they really had no hope, this is what the disciples would have done. They would have laid down at the bottom of the ship, planned on drowning, and we would have no gospels. But this isn't what happened, and so they must have had some kind of hope. Pope Emeritus Benedict, previous Pope, who's still living, has written a great deal about hope. He has a beautiful book on hope. Here's one thing that he says about it. "Those who despair do not pray anymore, because they no longer hope. Those who are sure of themselves and their own power do not pray, because they rely only on themselves. Those who pray hope in a goodness and in a power that transcend their own capabilities." What does that mean for us? Well, I think there are two ways in particular that we can grow in the virtue of hope and be receptive to God's rescuing power in our life. The first is to admit our own need, and then also to own our strength. So how do we admit our need? I think we can be kind of paralyzed. We can be afraid of the sense of our need, our vulnerability, and so we respond to it in ways that really are unhelpful. There are two kind of opposing ways that we do this. One is to pretend that everything is fine. "How are you?" "I'm fine." "Where are my teenagers?" Yeah. But this doesn't, we all do this throughout our entire lives. "How are you?" "I'm fine. I don't need any help." We all have this disposition. And then the other kind of opposing way that we do this is sometimes, maybe you're one of these people, maybe you've met people like this, we kind of become habituated to panic. Panic becomes a habit, and we almost start to enjoy the experience of water coming over the side of the boat, because if there's water coming over the side of the boat, we have something to talk about with our friends. And we can almost start to enjoy that. This also is not helpful. What God is really inviting us to is to be open about our need, but not scandalized by our need for help, but almost rejoicing in our need. Because if we have a need, then we have a claim on God's help and on his mercy. What God is asking for us is really just to pray something simple like, "Lord, here's what I'm beset by. Here's what I'm struggling with. I'm discerning marriage and don't know whether I'm called to it. I'm in a marriage, and I don't understand what's going on in it right now. I feel like I don't have friends. And to offer whatever it is that's going on for us gently to him in our needs, honestly, and to let him take care of that. And the way that we let him take care of that is the second part, to own our strength. God is our strength. He is the source of all of our hope. When we hope in something that is not God, we will always be disappointed. Here's another thing that Pope Benedict writes. All of our anxieties are ultimately fear of losing love. Thus, all of our hopes are at bottom hope in the great and boundless love. They are hope in paradise. We're made for God, and we're returning for God, returning to God. And our happiness comes only from that. So how do we put this into practice? We have two really good opportunities in the Mass to do this. Three, really. So first of all, during the intercession, we have this moment at the end where we pray quietly for the needs in our hearts. And that's a great moment to pray in our hearts silently to God and to say, Lord, here's what's going on, and I entrust this to you. The second time we can do this is when the priest puts the path and the chalice on the altar. There's a tradition of using this time as a time to give our intentions, what we're struggling with during the week, what we're praying for, kind of in a physical way in front of God, and ask Him to be transformed. And the last is when we receive communion. When we're in front of the Eucharist and we're receiving communion, we can take the words of the disciples as our own. Who is this in front of me? Who am I receiving? I'm receiving the one whom even the wind and the seas obey. And even the wind and the seas